Hello, this is Lamar Townsend, and this is my presentation on Talk Radio. Talk Radio is very important to me because I myself am part of Talk Radio. I have a broadcast that is syndicated on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and its main source is blogtalkradio.com. Some background information on Talk Radio. For example, we can start with the Federal Communications Committee. Federal Communications Committee is a federal branch of the United States government. It was established in 1934 by President Roosevelt as part of many of the New Deal policies. The objective of the Federal Communications Committee was to promote safety, life, and national communication on wire, cable, telegraph, and eventually would include television. Of course, we live in a television age. Today, we live in an age of multiple streaming networks: Netflix, Hulu, uh, Apple TV, you name it, there is something. Roku, there's something out there. And so these things would all follow later, but they would all fall in line. And the one of the other things is the communications was controlled by the big three at that time. At that time, there were only three network stations. That was CBS, NBC, and ABC. Certainly, we've come a long way since then. The other thing that was important or is important to know about talk radio in the history of communications here in the United States is the Fairness Doctrine. The Fairness Doctrine came about in 1949, and what the Fairness Doctrine said is anyone with a broadcast license has to present in a way that all and differing viewpoints are expressed. The objective was that there would be no biased communication that was released to the public, mainly targeted and political views. For example, the Democratic agenda versus the Republican agenda. And we see today that, listen, everyone's always trying to push their agenda. The next thing that we need to know as concerning the Fairness Doctrine is that in 1987, the Fairness Doctrine was abolished. It was the time of Reaganomics, and we know that the world was a very different, changing place in the 1980s with President Ronald Reagan. And so, what the abolishment of the Fairness Doctrine established the freedom of journalists and broadcasters are no longer restricted. You know how before I said that, listen, we want to make sure that everything's unbiased. So there are no more restrictions. And it's also stated that the government could no longer control the content or differing viewpoints. Isn't that interesting? No government control. Here are some data. Here is some data about how communications, radio, television, talk radio has affected or has been effective in changing how we process politics. The 1987 repeal of the Fairness Doctrine caused party polarization, and it is actually the party polarization is blamed on that repeal. And so this chart shows the House party means on liberal conservative dimensions. And it is from 1879 to 2010. And we see that the Republicans and the Democrats go in to opposite directions. That is the polarization. This next chart is pertaining to how people listen and what they are listening to. And we know that, listen, some people are listening to traditional AM, FM radio stations, but continually there are a lot of digital stations out there. And those digital stations are the platforms for talk radio. And those digital stations allow individuals to share their particular viewpoints, whether it be on social issues, political issues, economic issues, entertainment, radio. It could be on religious issues, family issues. And so this is a little chart showing how people are listening and the percentages that are listening on. This next chart shows how closely, the question comes about how closely would you say that you follow politics? And this gives the quarterly uh, percentage of people that listen very closely, somewhat closely, or not closely at all. And we know that many people today, um, some of them don't follow politics. They say, listen, politics doesn't mean anything. I'm not going to vote. My opinion doesn't count. They're going to do what they want to do anyway. But listen, there is still talk radio out there that's giving us information. This next chart, when listening to broadcast radio, is music an important factor to you? And so we know that for some people, yes. For some people, no. There's more polarization. And so things change. People go in opposite directions. But we know that, listen, there's so much talk radio out there that people don't even listen to music. You don't have to listen to music. It's not your only option on radio. And the final chart, when listening to broadcast radio, are news, weather, and traffic important factors to you? Seems to be pretty evenly paced according to percentage of yes and no. That concludes my presentation on talk radio. It's a little bit of history on how the government has controlled, does control, or will control what we are listening to. Thank you.